All right, here we go. Mod 5. Mod 5 is about adjusting to roadway environments, and the biggest thing that we do in this drive is go downtown and make sure that we're comfortable with one-ways, lefts on reds, just kind of that advanced, complex driving, kind of that simple to complex, building our skills as we develop them, right? Downtown is probably the trickiest place to drive, especially as a new driver when you're unfamiliar with the streets. And then as you get more familiar and more confident in your abilities, it becomes easier and easier. Obviously, there's still a lot to pay attention to, a lot of hazards downtown, but it does become easier with practice and experience, just like any other type of driving that you've done. So we're going to run through some slides, talk about some things, look at some videos, making sure you as a student just need to be paying attention. This is to mimic a live class. So if you have questions, we can chat and talk about it once the chat is available underneath this video. So here we go. All right, so to start, we're going to be talking about our imperfect roadways, and the biggest imperfection that we will come across as teen drivers and in pretty much any driver is that driving at night. And some of us have experienced this. Hopefully you've been getting driving practice in. Night is going to be a little bit more complex because it's more difficult to see, right? That is the biggest hazard of driving at night. You can't see as far. You don't have your peripheral vision as much to help. Another hazard, especially in the Bellingham area, is the fact that we have wildlife. Wildlife is a lot more active at night. Most of them are nocturnal, right? So if there's a deer standing off on the side of the road, we can only see where our headlights shine. You have a lot of different options in headlights. You have your normal headlights right here. There's two of them. One is your low beams, one is your high beams. You can only use your high beams if you are not following or traveling towards somebody. So low beams or just regular headlights. And then you have fog lights, which not every car will have fog lights. So you don't have to use fog lights in the fog, because if your car doesn't have fog lights, then there's no way for you to use them. You don't want to use your high beams in heavy rain, snow, or fog, because the water that is in those will reflect the light back towards you. So it'd actually be harder. We probably won't get any snow, fog right now because it's April when this is getting recorded. So next time it does get foggy, if you're in a driveway or parking lot, use your high beams, or you can look at a picture, just Google high beams in snow, and it makes it a lot harder to see, right? And so we always want to drive with our headlights on. It makes it easier to see us as drivers. So low beams always, high beams in certain situations, and then fog lights if you have them and it's foggy, then you would want to use your fog lights. If it's not foggy, you don't really have to use your fog lights, because all it's going to do is light up the road right in front of your car, a short distance. So it's not really going to help you be seen or see anything if it's not that condition. So this is what is in your driver's guide. By law, your headlights must be turned on from a half hour after sunset until a half hour before sunrise. So the sun sets and there's still light out. So that is why it's a half hour after. And same thing with sunrise. There's some sunlight before the sun comes up. But they also suggest that you should be using your headlights at all times. So the only reason you would need to know the half hour before and the half hour after is when you take your knowledge test, because hopefully we're always driving with our headlights on, because it makes it easier to see. Distances, if you are following someone, you cannot use your high beams within 300 feet. if someone is coming towards you, it is 500 feet. And the way that I keep this one straight and remember is when you're following someone, your headlights are getting reflected through a mirror. And when a light gets shined through a mirror, it kind of lessens the intensity of it. Whereas if a car is traveling towards you, it doesn't have a mirror to kind of refract through. So that's why that distance is further, because there's no light loss there. Rule of thumb, or what most drivers will do, because again, at night it's hard to see. It's definitely a lot harder to judge distances. If I was driving down a straight road, at night, I probably couldn't tell you with certainty what's 500 feet away. I could get an estimate, and everyone's estimate might be good or a little bit worse. So usually the rule of thumb is if you can see their headlights or tail lights, then you just dim your lights. Just in case, it might be 700 feet, it might be 1,000 feet, but you just want to make sure that it is dimmed so that you can not blind other drivers. Okay. Anytime you're pulled to the side of the road, you should have lights on, especially at night. If you're stopped alongside of the road, you can use your flashers and leave your low beams on, because that's not only going to light up the area that you're in, but your flashers are also going to let people know that you are stuck or need help, right? Your flashers are the triangle, your hazard lights, all 4 turn signals flash. Okay. Failure to dim your lights at night. If a vehicle is coming towards you with their high beams on, the best way to help your eyes is to look low and to the right. That fog line or the white line is the best place. You do not want to try and get back at them by flashing your lights, because then both of you cannot see, and then that makes it a potential for a head-on collision, right? If you can't see, they can't see, you tend to drive towards light. So that is a potential hazard there. A lot of the collisions with drunk drivers, if they run off the road and hit, at times they'll hit like a tow truck or a police car that has someone stopped. The main reason for that is if you're impaired, they're trying to do a very complex task, which is also illegal, but their eyes and mind see light and they go towards light. So if a tow truck is on the side of the road and has their flashing lights, sometimes or many times those collisions, the reason for that is the impaired driver is just kind of drifting towards the light. So making sure you don't want to obviously be impaired, but that is a potential hazard. Obviously, you want to be seen. A non-impaired driver is going to see you, and you're also going to be able to see other things coming towards you. So if you keep your lights on, it's going to be safer for you. At night, you also want to be wise of your speed. There's a term called overdriving your headlights. Overdriving your headlights means that you're going faster than the ability that you can see. So if you look at this little chart, your low beams under ideal conditions usually shine for about 182 feet. Now, if you haven't cleaned off your headlights or your car's dirty or it's dusty, then obviously they're not going to shine the ideal distance. So if a pedestrian was to step out in front at 50 miles an hour, your stopping distance is 190 feet. Well, if you pick up your pedestrian at 182 feet away, your car would not be able to stop in that time, right? If we're using our high beams, that extends our scene to about 350 feet, which then we do have time to stop at those higher speeds. But anytime you're driving at night, you'll usually want to reduce your speed a little bit unless you can see, right? You want to be able to see the distance in which you could safely stop. So sometimes, right, just because the speed limit is 55, if you can't see far enough, then you would want to make sure to reduce your speed to be safe here. Okay. Also, with imperfect conditions is a skid. So your car tires are sliding, they're not stopping or doing much for you. So it's much easier to avoid a skid than correct one once it starts. And if you think about things that we have talked about in the past, right, we've seen this list before. You might not remember all of them, but the biggest thing is, right, keeping the car in balance. Right, that's something we've worked on since drive one, of smooth start, smooth stop, smooth turns, right? And as long as it's smooth, the likelihood of that skid goes extremely low, right? The time that you could get into a skid if you're doing these things is when the roadway is not perfect. And so first we need to talk about what traction is, right? Traction is that ability for your car to grip the road or grip the surface. So things that would make your traction reduced is if there's heavy rain, snow, ice, even this one comes up a lot in the summer, is if we get a lot of days in a row of sun. The road has some oil in it when they pave it. So if we get a lot of sun, the road gets hot, right? Sun beating down. And then if we get a little bit of rain, if you know anything about oil and water, they don't mix. So all that oil has kind of risen on the road. And then if we get a little bit of water, that oil sits on top of the water. And so it makes it slick. So sometimes you'll hear about skidding or sliding collisions in the summer just with a small amount of rain. And that's the biggest reason why. So the limits of your traction is basically the car's ability to stay connected to the road, that you can stop, start, and turn smoothly. And the biggest way that we talk about traction is really in the tires. So if you look at your tires, if it looks like the one on the left, that is illegal, right? You have to have tread. That tread is kind of the markings in here, right? That's what gives you grip. And if you're trying to figure out, is my tires have enough tread or is it giving me enough traction? If you take a penny and put it into the tread, just push it down. As long as it covers Lincoln's hair, you have enough tread. So this tire on the right is actually just barely illegal. 2/32 is the depth. So in the penny, if it touches his hair, you're good. So if you put it down just like so, that is what it would look like for tread, and making sure that your tires are in working condition, especially winter when it's wet. You want to make sure, right, that water, snow needs to get displaced so your tires can actually grip to something. Okay. Even good tires can't always grip. Hydroplaning is something that is common in Washington, or could be common in Washington. That is where there's water, and if you're going too fast, your car actually kind of rides up on top of the water, which then you don't have steering control. So we'll watch a video about that and what that looks like. Situationally, right? Going up a hill or flat and straight is going to demand less traction, because you only need that traction to get started. If you're trying to go up and make a turn, right, you need traction to move forward. You also need traction to navigate through that curve. We don't get a lot of snow, but the last couple of years we have. Anything with snow, the best way to think about it is you want to kind of drive as if there was an egg under your foot. Because that's going to keep all your pedal movements soft and smooth, right? Traction, if we have a hard start or a hard stop and we're on less than ideal surfaces, right, that's going to make us skid and slide. So we want to make sure that we are able to safely stop. And so snow and ice, kind of keeping it nice and slow, it's much easier to keep moving than come to a stop and try and restart. That demands a lot of traction. So keeping it at 5 miles an hour is better than going 15, stop, trying to start again, especially if you're on some kind of hill for that. All-wheel drive or four-wheel drive is obviously going to help you get started. It's not going to help you stop at all. That's where some people get into troubles in driving in snow and ice, is they have an all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive that only helps you get traction started. If you're trying to slow, it doesn't truly matter what kind of if it's front, rear wheel, all wheel, everybody slows or stops in the same manner. So having an all-wheel drive car doesn't help you in the stopping, which is why sometimes you'll see a lot of trucks slide off into the ditch. Okay, it's great that they could get started, but you still have to be careful with your ability to stop, because the power to the tires isn't going to help that. Okay, so let's look at a couple videos to kind of talk about what our skid looks like and how to control it. Obviously, we want to prevent it, and we know how to prevent it. It's going to be just making sure that we keep the car smooth. So front wheel skid, right? Steering is lost. This is mostly going to happen because the brakes are applied so hard that your wheels lock up, or you get excessive speed in a turn or curve. So corrections is to look and steer to the target, off brake to regain traction. If you're skidding or sliding, that means that you are not able to control the car. So you have to get off that pedal so your wheels can reconnect and have some traction. So it could look like this.
If the front wheels are skidding while you're trying to turn, you lose directional control. In other words, the vehicle will continue in a straight line.
So if you have no traction, you're not going to be able to steer anything. So when those wheels lock up, it's kind of like just pushing a sled at that point. Anti-lock brakes help to keep the tires from locking up.
If this happens, look and steer in the desired direction, release the brake pedal, and reapply the brakes more gently to reduce speed.
Right, so you have to get off that pedal and then get back on it to try and regain traction. If you have ABS, then it'll keep your tires from locking up. Pretty much every car will have ABS. So you have a little bit of steering. That red car was able to steer a little bit, but again, if you don't have good traction, then you're not going to be able to stop before hitting that guardrail in that situation. Rear wheel, hard acceleration, braking, excessive pitch, right? That's the rocking. Typically excessive speed in a curve, same thing. Look and steer to the target, off brake and gas, whatever one you're on, stay off of it to get traction back.
Loss of control causes many fatalities every winter.
Combine a lack of traction with sudden acceleration, deceleration, or a sudden change in direction, and chances are you'll end up in a skid.
In a rear wheel skid, the back of your vehicle slides off your intended path of travel. This is correctable if you know what to do.
Foot off the gas, no brake, and look and steer in the desired direction.
So that rear wheel skid, you see that back end slide, which is where you have to get off the pedals, or else you'll just keep sliding back and forth. Sometimes we'll hear it called a fishtail. So making sure that you have that all-wheel skid, excessive speed, you have an increased chance of rolling, or you're just on a slick surface. And if all the wheels are skidding, you really have no control of stopping, turning. Right, and remember, we can avoid these by doing the right thing a lot easier than it is to correct them. So safe speed for curves. This car is obviously in the wrong lane. But if you get into this situation, off pedals, look and steer to where you want to be headed. And that's going to go for pretty much all situations, even emergency situations. If you're off pedals, look and steer to where you want to go. So 100% preventable. that point, probably not correctable because he had already gotten into the skid and there was no place to correct. So making sure that we are safe for conditions is huge.
This car was traveling at 35 miles per hour. Had it been traveling at 30, it would have stopped here.
So even though this is in daytime, this is just to help reinforce that idea of if it's at night, you want to make sure that you can see the distance in which you can stop in. The other thing is, right, that myth of, well, it's only 5 over. Well, if the speed limit is 30 and you're doing 35, that person stepping out, you can no longer stop in time. And that's a pretty serious collision, especially since that pedestrian has no protection, right? In a car, you have 2,000 plus pounds of metal around you and an airbag and a seatbelt to protect you. Bikes and pedestrians, right? A bicyclist at best has a helmet. A pedestrian has nothing there to protect them. So making sure that your speed and space is legal, but also more so thinking about what is safe for that space that you're traveling in. Okay. So then, hydroplaning.
Earlier, 4 members of a family in North Carolina were killed when their car hydroplaned on the road. So we ask Elizabeth Leamy what to do if it's happening to you.
Take a look at this real hydroplaning accident caught on tape and posted on YouTube. What's going on here?
Hydroplane.
Hydroplaning happens when there's too much water on the road for your tires to disperse. A wedge of water forms in front of the tires, and the car actually rides up onto that wave, losing contact with the road.
So it's basically, if you've ever been kind of surfing or skimboarding, oops, that's a cat. Skimboarding is probably the best way of looking at it. Is you are kind of riding that wave on top, and if your tires aren't connected to the pavement, then there is no traction. And when that happens, it means that you're going too fast for conditions. Obviously there's water present. That's why it's common in Washington. If you drive on I-5, a lot of water can sometimes pool. The pavement wears over time, and it wears where people drive. So there's kind of 2 tire tracks. And so if water sits in that, then you have that potential of riding up on a wave. And it's pretty loud. You'll hear it. Your tires try to disperse that water. So if you hear it, you feel that you're losing traction, it just means you need to slow down, that you're going too fast. And you're going to slow down by taking your foot off the gas. You're not going to try and brake, because if you brake and you're not connected to the pavement, you're not going to have traction, and that's going to cause...
The front of the car rises up and makes lots of noise, and soon the driver loses the ability to steer. Adequate tire tread helps whip water away, and experts say you need at least 1/16 of an inch, enough to come up to Lincoln's head on a penny. Authorities say the tires in that North Carolina accident were bald.
In downpours like this, especially when you've got ponding water and all, it's just imperative to have, tires that are safe.
To avoid hydroplaning in the first place, slow down to 30 miles an hour or less. Avoid hard braking and sharp turning, and try to drive in the tracks of the vehicle ahead of you. If you still find yourself hydroplaning, the experts at the Consumer Reports test track demonstrate what to do. Take your foot off the gas. Steer in the direction you want to go once you regain traction. And don't slam on the brakes. Just apply them gently once you feel the pavement again.
Basically what happens is the tires start to actually skim on the surface of the water, which gives you absolutely no steering. In those conditions, it can be very dangerous.
Elizabeth Leamy, ABC News, Washington.
Okay, so making sure to reduce your speed. The car in front of you, while you would drive in their tracks, is they're wicking water away. So that water's already been displaced, and ponding water just means standing water. So if your road surface is covered in water, that is what you would want to look out for or be aware of. Okay, so that is our imperfect situations. Now we are going to, get to downtown, because we're going to have situations that come up from there that are a little bit different. And so first thing is, as you continue to drive, and especially when you're driving at home, there's something called commentary driving, where you state what you see, solve that problem, right? If we're looking for problems, that's at least 15 seconds ahead, so we can solve it before we get into that 4-second zone, because that 4-second zone is that danger zone, because, right, it takes us about 4 seconds to stop if we need to. So we want to find and solve those problems before it gets to us. So this is really helpful in driving with your parents. If you talk about what problems you see and how you're going to manage them, that puts them at ease, because they're not quite sure if you see the deer on the side of the road that might run out in front of you. And if they don't feel the car starting to slow, they might not realize that you see that. Or if there's, a fire truck coming, they might not know if you see that. So you talking about your driving and talking about what you see and what is safe can help put your parents at ease. And it's just a good skill to use. Some people really like it. Some people find it distracting. So whatever works for you is perfectly fine. I know in the past I've had a lot of students who commentate when they do their skills. A couple students would talk through parallel parking the entire time and just kind of say the steps in there out loud. Back bumper to back bumper, 45 degrees, straight in, front bumper to bumper, and then all the way to the left. And every time they would say it out loud, they did great. Anytime they would forget or not talk to themselves through, say, back around the corner, they usually struggled. So whatever works for you. When you're driving with us, obviously you can talk it out loud as much as you want. And then if obviously you need help, that's what us as instructors are there for, unless you're doing your final drive test. So just finding that, stating that. We're going to look at an officer from the UK doing commentary driving, just to kind of look and kind of see what it could look like. Obviously, he's going to be at a pretty high level because he does a lot of driving for a living. So, but there's things and habits that he has that hopefully all of us as drivers have as well. The biggest thing with downtown is we will go across railroad tracks and train crossings. And so there's an increased risk with having trains because a train cannot stop like a car can stop. So we want to make sure, this cat out of here. We want to make sure that we're aware of railroad train crossings or railroad crossings. There'll be markings to help us. Our white crossbuck, it will tell us the number of tracks. Almost every train crossing in Bellingham has a crossing gate and the side-by-side flashing red lights. Not every train crossing has to have that, but most of them will, especially a lot of the populated ones, and the train always has the right of way. Okay, we as a car can stop, a train cannot. It usually takes a fully loaded train about a mile to come to a full stop. So we need to make sure that we are doing so. If you get into more rural areas, say Eastern Washington or Montana, that's where railroad crossings don't always have the lighted signs, but most of our train crossings here do. Bellingham is a very active train area. We have coal trains that come through for the refinery. We have a passenger train that runs up to Canada, also goes all the way down to Portland. So we have passenger trains. We have all kinds of trains that come through here. If you live anywhere close to downtown, you probably can hear them. Might not hear them as much right now with oil. They're not producing or shipping as much, but the passenger trains probably are still running. I don't know. I haven't looked in that. Okay. Train tracks are private property. We get to cross them, but we do not get to play on them or be on them. You don't want to place any objects on it. You want to stay at least 30 feet back. If it is a coal train, right? Sometimes they have covers across the top, but rocks or something could fly off. You have to cross in designated areas. You always want to avoid distractions, but especially around train crossings. You always yield to a train. You have the crossbuck, that will be yellow, and R&R stands for railroad. Always look for a second train. That's why it tells you how many tracks there are. And then this is if you're getting on as a pedestrian, right? Never attempt to get on it in motion. Stay away from it until it stops if you are a pedestrian getting on a train. Trains are actually a kind of nice way of traveling. You don't have to worry about driving and whatnot. I've used the train to go to Seattle and Portland a number of times. And it's kind of nice because then you don't have to worry about parking. You don't have to worry about driving. Portland's usually about a 5-6 hour drive from here, I think. So taking the train kind of reduces some of that stress of driving. Okay, one-way streets, big thing in Bellingham. This is downtown Bellingham. If you look, they have arrows. Holly Street is the main one that runs down the hill, and then Chestnut and Magnolia both run up the hill. And if you're on a true one-way pattern, you have one way that is going to the right, the next one will be going towards the left. So then you can kind of quickly go around the block if you need to go each direction. So we have quite a few of those for a city. Okay, steady red light means that you will stop, right? Red light, we've been there before. Flashing red is the same as a stop sign. Red arrow means that you are stopped for that. The new, or what is new, is if you're turning right, you may do so, right? Or right on red, you can do so after you make a full stop and it's safe to do so, and there's no sign. Okay. You can also turn left on red if you're turning onto a one-way street under those same conditions. If it makes a full stop, it is safe to do so, and there is no sign, you can turn left on red as long as you are going to a one-way. Okay, one-ways will be identifiable. You'll have a do not enter sign. You'll also have your red to tell you no. That gets used a lot, right? Our regulatory signs. You'll also have a black and white one-way sign, and the arrow will point in the direction. You'll also have a no left or no right turn sign. So if the road only goes to the left, there'll be a no right turn sign, because if you turned right, you'd be going the wrong way on a one-way. And then freeway has the yellow line on the left. A lot of one-ways downtown will not have the yellow line on the left because there'll be parking on the left-hand side. So yellow is to show where traffic is divided. White is to divide lanes traveling in the same direction. So a lot of downtown is all white going one direction. There will be no yellow line because there is no dividing traffic. The freeway, this is still a one-way, and it is dividing traffic. It's just also divided by that physical barrier. There's that grass in between. So one-ways could have a yellow or it couldn't. It just depends on where that oncoming traffic would be, because yellow divides oncoming, white divides same direction. Okay, so left on red, why this is okay and why it is legal. So first off, if you look at this picture, turning right on red makes sense. You stop, you make sure it's safe. When you're clearing to turn right on red, you're checking if this car has a green light, then cars from the left have a green light, and you're checking one lane of traffic. Is it clear? Yes, I can go, right? If this has a left turn arrow, right, it's one lane of traffic. Is it clear? Yes, I can go. Well, the same thing is true for one-way. If we're on a one-way and we're turning to a one-way, all cars from these two lanes have to be going straight. You can't have cars coming from here because they're going the wrong way. So same thing, if we're turning left, we'll go to the leftmost lane, making sure we're in the left to the left. We've got one lane. We've made a full stop. Is this lane clear? Yes. Then we can go. We only have one lane of traffic to check. Same thing here. We have a red light. This car has a red light. We make a full stop. We check. Is our one lane of traffic clear? Yes, turning into that leftmost lane. Now, with downtown, one thing that we need to be aware of is when these lights change, the ability to make that turn changes as well. As if this light changes to green on this right picture, this light changes to green, and we are going to turn left. This car now has the right of way. They're at a green light. They're going straight. They get the right of way. And then we need to make sure that it is clear. Okay. If we jump to this middle picture, okay, light is red. It switches to green. We're trying to check to make sure that we have a clear gap. We see that there's a clear gap. We check our light that it's green. We always have to look in the direction we want to go. And we're going to do this for every turn, but this one is so imperative, is if this light turns green, these crosswalks that are adjacent to us are now active. So if we get a green light, if someone's waiting to cross the street here or here, we have to wait for them to cross the street. So downtown has a lot of things to scan. If your parents feel comfortable and you've been doing a lot of driving, by all means, get down there and do some practice. Or if you want to wait until we can start driving and do those drives with an instructor first, that is perfectly fine. Downtown, you'll see people turn from the left lane to the rightmost lane. It's not the safest, so we will always have you do what's best, and that's from the left lane to the left lane. Just like if we're in the right lane, we will go to the right lane. Okay, so left on red is possible as long as you are going to a one-way. And so then if we take a look at
street at some time. The key is to discover your mistake quickly. It can not only be highly dangerous, but at the least, very embarrassing. So up to this point, we have instructed our students on how to notice that there are only white lines on a one-way street. On a busy day, cars are...
These only have white lines because there's parking on both sides. Cars parked in the same direction will help. If there was not parking on the left-hand side, that line would be yellow for Washington.
They're parked the same way on both sides of the street. The no can turn warning sign, which is most often prior to the intersection, looks like this. Or this one saying no right turn. So even when a driver knows what to look for, they can be easily distracted and miss the important information that is out there. Watch a number of students get busy talking and looking at all there is to see, and then be told to turn where they shouldn't and get set up for trouble.
Alright, no oncoming
No oncoming traffic, beautiful. Let off the brake, here we go. Good. Right lane change. Beautiful. There's our jail. They say it's full.
Really?
Yeah. It's pretty big, huh? Two of them side by side. The little windows they can't crawl out of.
Oh, those are windows?
Yeah, they just let light in. We got a tunnel that goes under the street over to the courthouse, which is right across from them.
Cop car on the left, back there, intersection.
Good. Let's make a right here.
In Bellingham, ours are a little bit easier than this too, is if it's a no right turn, usually that no right turn is hanging by the light. It's not prior to the intersection on most of ours.
Good to go?
Gotcha, one-way street. I got you, dude.
Oh, you did?
Okay, so
ooh, nice.
You missed the arrow back there with the red circle, and you were staring right at a one-way arrow. Okay, see how easy it can happen?
Yeah.
Okay, so making sure that we see that. Also the black and white, obviously when it's not a old video, that will be easier to see as well. Most of our intersections in Bellingham have 2 to 3 of those one-way arrows because it does happen time to time. Obviously, if you're paying attention, it's not going to happen to you, but you will find people traveling the wrong way at times. If someone is traveling the wrong way on a one-way, you're just going to do the best to stay out of their way, because you have no idea why they're traveling that way. They might be impaired, they might just be lost or confused. So if it is safe to get into the parking spaces, that is going to be safer than traveling straight at them. So just kind of slowing and moving out of the way would be best. Okay, for our railroads.
Imagine for a moment that this can of soda is your car. And there you are, sitting inside your shiny car. The one you worked hard at 2 jobs after school and on weekends, just so you could afford it. Or, if you're really lucky, the one your parents gave you as a present. And you're driving around town, wondering what to do with all your newfound freedom. Feeling like the road ahead is full of possibilities, like it's been waiting all this time for you to discover it. What you didn't count on is a train slamming into you at the railroad crossing you just ignored. In America, a person or vehicle is hit by a train about every 3 hours. And it's destructive. If your car is hit by a freight train, you're almost 20 times more likely to die than in a collision involving another vehicle. That's because the force of a 30-car freight train hitting your car is equivalent to the force of your car hitting a soda can. All those dreams and ambitions you have, the freedom driving brings you, all those great experiences you're about to have, can be gone in a second, squashed like that can of soda. Now, you're probably thinking, yeah, but trains are slow. I'd see it coming in time to get out of the way. Wrong. A fully loaded train can weigh, on average, up to 12 million pounds, sometimes more. The same as around 3,000 cars, 725 elephants, and all of the metal from the Eiffel Tower dumped in a pile. Always expect a train, and if you see one coming, wait. Remember, you can stop in time. The train can't.
Okay, so a couple things here. First off, trains look like they go slower because they're so much bigger. Same principle with motorcycles. They look like they're not going as fast because it has that single headlight, right? So the differences in size kind of plays tricks on your eyes. So passenger trains, when they're out in the open, can go upwards of 75, 80 miles an hour. Freight trains, I don't know if they go as fast. I've never ridden on a freight train to know how fast they go. But when they're in town, they can still stay at 35-ish or more miles an hour. So just because it looks far away, it's traveling faster than you expect, right? And then that weight discrepancy is huge too, right? Just like a car with a pedestrian or a car with a bicycle collision is so serious, a train has that significant weight higher than your car, which if you never want to run over trash, but if there's a pop can in the middle of the road and you hit it, right, it's probably not going to do a whole lot unless maybe the aluminum hits your tire in the right spot and might pop a tire. But as far as damage, it's not really going to cause a ton of damage to your car. Well, the same thing is true for the train. The only time the train really gets damaged is if it runs off the tracks, whereas your car is going to get smashed like a pop can. So remember, you can wait. The train cannot stop in time for you. So make sure that you're going to wait. If you're following a school bus or a large truck, they by law have to stop at a train crossing and look both ways, even if the gate is not down. And that's just because they always have to expect a train is coming because it takes them longer to cross that crossing gate. So make sure that you are aware of that if you're following a bus, that they're going to come to a stop at a train crossing. Okay. So this is commentary driving. We're just going to watch a short clip of it to get an idea of what this would look like.
Indeed. Got pedestrian in the road now, and traffic inbound from the right-hand side, mirrors nice and clear behind, then scanning for pedestrian movement left and right, mirrors and across the left traffic in the distance, mirrors and light brakes now for the changing dread ATS, scanning in deep to the right-hand side, offside mirror position and away from the danger. Nice eye contact from the man with the box there, mirrors, and picking up the drive now, continue at A5 southbound towards Cricklewood and Kilburn, mirrors, nice and clear behind now, approach speed now 70 miles an hour, looking for reaction from those away, mirrors and the taxi cab over the brow of the hill, where's the queue of traffic, mirror, and off the drive now, approach speed 90 miles an hour, mirrors, nice reaction from the black one left and from the cab. Vision up.
Okay, so even though he is allowed to go faster than the speed limit because he has his sirens on, he's in some kind of pursuit or chase or responding to some kind of situation, he's still checking his mirrors. You hear it almost every 5 to 7 seconds. If he starts to slow, you hear mirrors, right? Eye to mirror, foot to brake. Anytime you slow, you want to know what's going on behind you. He's also scanning, although people should be moving out of his way, he's making sure that they're responding appropriately and he's able to fix and correct anything, right? He's even commented the man on the box he made eye contact with that they were going to stand and wait, that they saw him coming, so then he did not have to yield to the crosswalk. The black car that he just passed, right, he was making sure that they are not going to try and lane change, that they're just staying in that lane so he can clearly go by. Anytime his speed has changed, he has checked those mirrors, so just kind of take note of that as he continues on the drive.
Up to the bend left and mirrors, mindful of what goes off, generally comes back on again, and mirrors off the drive nice and early to the feature near side mirror position to straighten the line on the bend, and we're warned that the dual carriageway ends here. Mirrors need a reaction from the cab away now, mirrors and light brake.
All right, so now that that gets pointed out, you really hear every time he's checking your mirrors, and that's something that every driver should be doing, is making sure that they know not only what is happening in front of them by scanning, but also checking those mirrors every 5 to 7 seconds to be sure of what is safe. Okay, so that wraps up that section. Now we are going to talk about your final drive, and your final drive is part of drive 6. And so we want to make sure that it is clear what's going to be expected of you. So when you do your drive test, which you will do it with some kind of private school Nelson acceleration ball, once you pass your written test and pass traffic safety, that's when you can do your drive test. Obviously, you have to get your 50 hours in as well. But this is the sheet that they're going to use. And your drive 6, we use the exact same sheet, or pretty much the exact same sheet, so that you're comfortable with it, you're familiar with it, you know what is going to be expected of you, you know what to do. And within this, we'll explain how deductions work so that you are a safe driver. Now, there's a lot of ways that you cannot lose points, but it may not always be the best practice. So we will also talk about what those best practices will look like. So when you do this, this is from the DOL. There's obviously going to be a lot of information that is instructor based of how we score. But if you know how we score and what they're looking for, right, as we practice, it's going to be easier to remember, oh, this is what it should look like. So here is kind of the pre-test of what they're going to do before you start your drive test.
While the driver test measures your skill behind the wheel, it's important to remember that the test actually begins before you start your engine. A pre-test must be successfully completed before the driver can enter the open road. If the car isn't in proper working order, or the driver fails to have proper paperwork, the test is over. Here's what a pre-test looks like.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm Examiner Glenn. I'll be conducting your test today. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Good. May I see your appointment slip, your ID, and your insurance, please?
It's my appointment slip,
Okay.
my ID, and my proof of insurance.
Thank you. Okay, I see that you do have a valid insurance card for this car. Go ahead and put those away now.
Thank you.
Is the engine shut off?
It is.
Very good. How about your parking brake? Could you release that and reset it, please? Okay, the next thing I'd like you to do is demonstrate your hand signals, please. First, I'd like you to demonstrate slowing or stopping. Now, second, right turn and left turn. Thank you. Next, I'd like you to demonstrate your ability to stop the vehicle.
Okay.
Place your foot over the gas pedal. Don't press it, but when I say stop, step on the brake as fast as you can.
Okay.
Stop. Very good. Next, I'd like to have you start the vehicle.
Okay.
Now, keep your foot on the brake pedal. Push the brake. Keep your foot on the brake. I see the left one is good, the right one's good, and the center one's good. Next, we're going to check your electric turn signals. First, left. Thank you, and right. And the tabs are good. Okay, right turn signal, left turn signal. Good, we're ready to go.
Having arrived with the correct documents, an understanding of hand signals, and a car in proper working order, this driver has successfully completed the pre-test and moves on to the open road for the next phase of her driver test.
Okay, so you can do the drive test in your personal car. So all those things have to happen, right? You have to have your brake lights, insurance, registration, all the things they talked about has to be there. If you don't have your own car or you don't feel comfortable doing the drive test in your own car, maybe the only cars you drive at home is a Tahoe and you really don't want to parallel park a Tahoe. A lot of the drive schools will allow you to rent their car so you can do your drive test. Obviously that comes with an additional cost, but whatever kind of works. So that is the pre-test, making sure that things are in working order. Okay, so something like this, they'll tell you, they'll ask you for those things, checking your insurance, checking your registration. If you're 18, you don't have to pass traffic safety, but once you pass traffic safety, it'll go into the state system. Obviously, we need to get our drives done for that to happen, but you also have to hold your permit for at least 6 months and get 50 hours of practice. So that will get taken care of. All of this will get filled out. So you just have to have your permit, making sure that, you know all of that. They will have you do that safety check, checking your brakes, turn signals, license plates, tires, making sure everything is working, especially when it's your private car. That instructor or examiner, they don't have a brake. They've never ridden with you. So they want to make sure that everything is obviously safe and legal, because if you're going to be a driver, everything needs to be legal. But they want the stopping test is if they get into a situation, they have to make sure that you are going to stop the car if they tell you to stop, to avoid a collision, because they cannot do that. Okay. They'll also say you could be scored as not signaling if you fail to use your arm signals in the appropriate times during the test. This is really for parallel park. If there's a car close behind you and a car couldn't see your turn signal, then you would have to hand signal. So that's why they have you show left, right, slow down, making sure that you know that. And then, yeah, for parallel park, backing around the corner, usually people can see your turn signals because you're backing into the street. So we have those. Okay, checking that ability to stop. Then they will talk about what they're here to perform. You can read that if you need to pause it to read it. They're going to basically test your skills and abilities. And if you do something so serious, it's an automatic failure. If it's a minor error, they'll just deduct points. It's out of 100. You can lose 20 or get an 80 on it. For us, we'll have you no more than 15, because if you pass with us and then one thing doesn't go quite as right when you do your normal drive test, then we're still confident that you're going to pass. And that's why we do 15 points instead of the 20 points, because once you start doing your skills test with one of the private schools, you have to pay for it each time. Whereas if you need to kind of do the skills test twice or 3 times because your skills aren't quite there yet. Every time you do it with us, it's just free. It's practice, just making sure that you are the safest driver that we can produce. So, reasons for automatic disqualification: an accident. If you come in contact with a pedestrian, another vehicle, running off the road, or contact with a fixed object. If there's a mailbox, right, anything that you come into collision with would be an accident. Dangerous actions, okay, an accident that was prevented by expert driving on another part. If a car swerves and misses you, or if a pedestrian dodges out of the way, or if the examiner has to grab the wheel and pull it so you miss something, or they verbally tell you to stop or slow, and that is what causes you to avoid an accident. Those are all dangerous actions. If you leave the roadway, that can be a dangerous action. Violation of law: if you are speeding, if you fail to stop at a stop sign, if you fail to stop at a red light, driving on the wrong side of the road, if you're in a straight lane and turn from it, or if you're in a turn lane and go straight, if you drive the wrong way on a one-way, if a cop stops you for any reason, right, those would all be your violations. And failure to perform is that you refuse to do the maneuver. Okay, you repeatedly fail to follow instructions or directions, then you would fail. Okay, I don't give the drive test. I don't know how many times, if they say turn left and you try and turn right, what that looks like. But just making sure that you can ask them questions about what they're asking you to do. You can't ask them, how do I back around the corner? But if you're confused in their verbiage, you can ask them. We'll talk about what the verbiage looks like. If you ride with me, I typically use what the state uses, just so you're comfortable with it. But you cannot just say, no thanks, I don't want to parallel park today. That will make you automatically fail. Okay, so you have to at least attempt everything, right? If you don't do well on parallel park, it's not a huge deal, because it's only 4 points and you can miss 20 points, right? Because the deductions is the accumulation of your errors. So if you get more than 20 points taken off, or a score of less than 80, then that is what's going to cause you to fail your drive test. So required maneuvers: backing, parking on a hill, parallel parking. Starting is a kind of getting off the side of the road to the driving lane, left and right hand turns, and lane changes. So, right, kind of the basic things that we've been working on since Drive 2, those are the things that are going to be scored, and I'll talk about what they're going to be looking for as they score. So if we're talking about backing, backing around the corner is the one that they will have you do.
In this video, we're going to demonstrate the backing maneuver.
Back your vehicle around the corner, staying as close to the curb as you can. Then, safely continue backing in a straight line until directed to stop.
This test measures skills needed for backing out of a driveway or alley. It requires proper vision techniques, primarily looking out the back window when backing. You want to look where you're driving, not just in the mirrors or to the front. Remember to stop before the crosswalk area, making sure that there aren't any pedestrians or other traffic in that zone. Once you know the area is clear, continue backing. Throughout the backing maneuver,
you can also get a stop at the curb line. It's not required, but it makes it easier to back around the corner. This is the one that we did in an alleyway. You can also do it on a street. It doesn't matter where it is. Around a rounded corner is sometimes easier. So if there's one around, usually they'll do that. But if you were able to do it from the alley, the rounded corner will be a little bit.
Stay within 18 inches of the curb. That'll help you stay out of the way of other traffic. Being aware of what's going on around you in all directions is extremely important. Just like a quarterback with great field vision, you want to be aware of everything that's going on all around you. The difference, of course, is that driving is not a game. A single mistake made behind the wheel can be deadly. It really can't be stressed enough. When you're moving backwards, you want to be looking backwards too, making sure that nothing and no one is in your way. Once you've come to a stop, You can prepare to re-enter the roadway. Check your side view mirror and turn to look behind you so that you can see if there is any oncoming traffic approaching from behind. Once the way is clear, you can safely pull forward and onto the street. Make it a point to follow the proper steps of doing the backing maneuver, and they'll become habit forming. That'll make you a better driver and will help keep you.
So keeping it slow, right? Keeping it within 18 inches. That second stop at the curb line will also help you keep it there. So this is what the instructor will say. You heard him say it. So back around the corner until he says, or him or her says to stop. And then re-enter traffic, that is your smog. Anytime you hear re-enter traffic, hopefully that just makes you automatically think smog. If a car couldn't see your turn signal, that's where you would give a hand signal for that, okay? When you do this, backing is what you'll see on the score sheet. So vision, you don't look to your blind spot. You're not looking back as you back. You fail to signal when you're re-entering traffic. You should also be signaling as you come around. You fail to stop at the sidewalk. You're backing too fast. You don't have control. You're over wide by 2 wheels. You come in contact with the curb, which you can no longer continue to back. 2 wheels on the curb is a dangerous action. So if you get your usually right side tires, if both of those go onto the curb, then you're done. Okay. Fails to, you'd only lose points if visibility is limited. That's why we will do 2 stops, because if you need to check, then you don't have to worry about this one. If you can see, you don't need the second stop, but you might as well do 2 stops just to make sure that it's clear. Because if you're backing, you have to yield to everyone. If you're unable to do it, just any reason why. And then if you back off the road with 1 wheel when there's no curb, then that would be a deduction there. If you're just a little bit wide, maybe that 24-inch range, you're not all the way out into the road. If you're backing straight and you start to drift away from the curb, if you cut across where a curb would be, if you hit the curb but it doesn't stop your movement, and then if you weave, if you're going back and you're kind of not backing straight and you kind of have that weave going on, that would be another 2-point deduction. So the most points you could lose is 4. If you weave, but you also fail to stop or signal, you just lose the 4 points. They don't stack on top of each other. So backing is a 4-point category. You could lose 2, or you could lose 4 points based on what you did. So if you weaved and forgot to stop, then you just lose the 4. The weave kind of gets thrown out because the DP, the danger potential, is much more serious than just a lack of skill. Okay. Failing to signal or canceling your signal is a mechanical one that could get marked off. If you forget to shift back to drive after you back around the corner and you're trying to re-enter traffic, that would be a gear because you're not traveling in the direction. Okay. If we move on to hill parking, sometimes they'll say, see the park on the right. I want you to park your car or park your vehicle at the park as though you were going to leave it unattended. Okay. They're not going to tell you if it is up or downhill. They're just going to tell you to park your car, and they are going to evaluate your ability to park that car. So parking on a hill, to get to the side of the road, you have to smog. Once we are on the side of the road, you have to smog to leave. Okay. And then when we're parking, we need to make sure our park brake is on, we are in park, and the wheels are turned properly, which up and away is if there's a curb. If there's not a curb and you are up or downhill, then you're turning your tires towards the curb, right? So uphill with a curb, tires away, everything else, tires towards, okay? Other ways, if you're too far away, you have to be within 12 inches. We would like you to be closer to that 6 range. If you do not maintain control, if you hit the curb and again, 2 wheels over the curb, then you're done. It's a dangerous action. Lack of skill, jockeying, if you have to you pull in, and then you're not as close as you want to be, and you pull in again, and then you pull in again, right? It needs to be one smooth motion to the curb if you hit the curb, but it doesn't stop your motion. If you release the parking brake and you kind of lurch, that's control. And then if your rear tire kicks more than 12 inches, so your front tire might be within 12, but your rear tire might be outside, that would be a distance issue. Okay, not signaling or forgetting to cancel your signal. Same thing, if you try and start and you're still in park, that would be what it would look like. Okay, parallel park.
When driving, it's crucial to always be aware of what's going on around you in every direction. And that's certainly true when parallel parking.
Do you see the brown car parked up ahead?
Yes.
Imagine another vehicle parked 1.5 car lengths behind it. Parallel park between the two vehicles.
The driver pulls alongside the SUV she'll park behind,
okay,
then executes 3 moves as she backs up. She begins by turning the steering wheel to the right, then back to the left to straighten out the car and pull up evenly alongside the curb.
That's one move.
Next, she pulls forward and parks. It only takes her 3 moves to park, limiting the potential impact on other drivers. Here, the driver has pulled up alongside the SUV once again, but before backing up, she sees a car approaching from behind. She waits for it to pass, then begins to parallel park.
And at that point, we'd already have our signal and reverse lights on. So if you see a car, you're just waiting for them to either give you the right of way, or since we're backing, they get the right of way to go around us if it is safe for them to do it.
Notice that she's not just looking at her mirrors. She's turned, looking directly into her direction of travel. To be parked legally, she needs to have both right tires within 12 inches of the curb. Parking further away from the curb presents a traffic hazard. But be careful not to run your tires up into the curb either. That can damage them. Once you've safely parked, the drive test continues.
Re-enter traffic.
After all, you'll need to safely drive away from that parking spot. Notice that our driver looks out her window before re-entering. Then, as she begins to re-enter, she looks a second time, making sure there's no traffic coming up from behind. She's successfully completed the parallel parking test, and back on the road.
And that's where the hand signal might be necessary because that car could not see you. That second head check is something that most people do naturally, right? So you're smogging to re-enter traffic. If you can't see, kind of start your way out and then make sure to check it again. So 3 different ways. There'll be 2 cars that you park between. The one that they did is the one that we usually do, right? Is, you know, you have a 1.5 car length and you play pretend with the car from behind. And then sometimes they'll have poles, and the poles are to mirror 2 cars. Okay, so danger potential, same thing. Vision and signaling, making sure you're looking where you're going, signaling what you're doing. If you come in contact or drive through the poles or hit the curb with a wheel and drive over it, right? All of those things. If you just scrub against the curb, it's a 2-point deduction. If you fail to park within the 1.5 car length, so if it's the imaginary one and you continue to back and back and back and you're now 3 cars away from that front car, you'll lose points. If you're not centered, so if you're not centered between the car in front of you and the car behind you, remember centered, you shouldn't be able to see the tires touch the ground. You don't want to be too close to them, but tires touch the ground is enough space to get out of the parking spot. That is not what centered would be. That's why you have to back before leaving parallel parking. Okay. Start maneuver is really just to make sure that you are checking your space. We're not going to watch the video because all they're going to say is drive to the side of the road and stop and then re-enter traffic. And all they're doing is making sure that when you drive to the side of the road, you smog, make sure that you find a clear spot to do it. And when you re-enter traffic, you smog and make sure that you enter a clear gap of traffic. Making sure that you don't come in contact with anything. They're just checking, are you signaling looking over your shoulder, right? All those things that you do in smog, does that happen, okay? Left and right hand turns, they'll say at the next corner, turn left, or at the next corner, turn right. They'll always give you that. Corners can be intersections with or without stop signs, lights. If it is a roundabout, they'll say entering the roundabout, take the second exit to the right. So just, you know, as soon as you get in, first exit, second exit, third exit, fifth exit, whatever it might be, just like we will do on Drive 4. If you haven't done that yet, we will coach you through roundabouts, and your turns is something that we've been working on since Drive 1, making sure that you end up in your lane. If there is no center line, you have to imagine where the center line is and go to your side, and then you can come to the center if you're trying to avoid a parked car. But you can't just assume that you get to drive on the center of the road. Okay, so left turns, that's vision, signaling, speed. If you have to break through your turn, you cut your turn, your tires go over where the center line would be. Okay, same thing with right turns. When you lane change, they'll say when safe, move to the left lane or move right a lane. It's pretty similar, same thing. Vision, making sure that you head check, making sure that you signal, making sure that you don't start moving before you know it's clear. If you start to drift and then head check, that's not how we make a lane change. So making sure that everything is done correctly. Okay, flow of traffic, stop signs, making sure that you follow the right-of-way laws. If you hesitate too long or fail to comply with who gets to go next, you can lose points for that. So lights, stop signs, flashing lights, crosswalks, all of those things apply there. For our intersections, okay, uncontrolled intersections, your following distance. If you're going too fast or too close with cars based on the roadway or weather, you're not leaving a proper following distance. All of those things are there. Passing usually never gets scored because there's not a lot of times that you'll need to pass on your drive test. Or that right of way, you do not yield the right of way, or you take the right of way that was not yours. Each of those are potential hazards. And then general driving, if you drive below the speed limit significantly without a reason, if there's kids and whatnot, then they will know why you're driving below the speed limit. Residential's anywhere from 20 to 25. If it's a kind of small residential, the streets are narrow. 25 is probably not a safe speed. So if you're closer to 20, that is going to be better, especially like the residential behind Bellingham High School. Going 25 in that area at any time of the day, it just seems way too fast based on how many people and parked cars and vision problems that there are there. So as long as there's a reason, you definitely can go slower than the posted sign for that. Okay. So yeah, so that's what your drive test looks like. It'll only be about 15 to 20 minutes. They'll just get all of those things in. You'll do 6 turns at least, all of the maneuvers. You'll go through a lot of intersections. Most of it will be residential. Very unlikely to have one-ways and freeway on it because the state test is supposed to be something that can be done across the entire state. So if you live in Chelan, you are 3.5 to 4 hours away from a freeway, which they're not going to drive 4 hours to make or do a DOL test. Roundabouts could be on there. They're a nice way to get some yield signs in. But again, if the roundabout is not close to anything, they'll try and avoid it because they're going to try and keep that as close to 15 to 20 minutes long. Things will happen rapidly. Instructions will be given timely, but you won't have drive straight for 10 minutes. And then now we're going to back around the corner and then drive straight for another 10 minutes. And now we're going to parallel park. They're going to try and make it as quick and efficient as possible. Just because, right, they want to get as many drive tests in a day to make sure they can be efficient with their time for that. Okay, so that is your drive test, which looks like this. That's the main sheet. And then the final thing today, which this is what you're going to comment underneath the assignment. This is how I know that you've made it to the end, right? Because the responsibility is on you to make sure that you're watching the full video and paying attention to the full video. Since we're not going to do this live, that is just too complex of a task to try and get all 30 of us on at the same time. So this is your task. There's information about planning a trip. Okay, short trips, is it needed? Could you bike? Could you walk? Could you take the bus? If so, you could save some money probably in not having a car. Just because you get your license doesn't mean you always have to use it. Do you have enough time? The only reason people are late is because they didn't leave early enough, pretty much. So allow enough time. If being late stresses you out, plan more time, especially as a new driver. Plan for things to take a little bit longer. Then you're not tempted to do illegal things like speed. Okay. Planning ahead. Obviously now we have GPS in all of our phones, or most of us all have GPS in our phones. We can't use our phones while we drive, so that's something you'd have to set up beforehand. But you want to know where you're headed so you don't get lost or confused. If you have to use a map, then have that passenger use a map to help you out. Those days of reading a map has kind of gone away. When I was younger, I remember reading maps to my parents as they would drive to soccer practice or whatnot, or games where we didn't know where we were trying to go. So GPS is your friend, but make sure that somebody other than the driver is using it, because it also could be very distracting. Okay, if you're going long distances, using the freeway or highway system is going to be more efficient because you're going to be able to drive faster. You're going to have less hazards. You're on the freeway, you won't have intersections. If you're on the highway, you'll have pretty much stoplights. Sometimes you'll have a stop sign here or there, but those larger roads, you'll be able to be more efficient in your travel. Okay. Obviously, this is something that can be checked if you're going on a long trip, making sure that you go or drive a distance that is suitable. As a young driver, you probably don't want to try and drive 8 hours a day. If you think about school is about 7.5 hours. And I would be impressed if you could say that you pay attention to every single thing, every single moment of the day for 7.5 hours at school. Okay, there's a lot of time that we can find ourselves distracted, even myself, right? I don't pay attention at school 7.5 hours straight. So trying to ask yourself to do that while you're in a car, that might just not be physically possible for really anybody, no matter what age of a driver. Obviously, taking breaks would be conducive. Maybe you drive for 2 hours, take a break for a half hour, drive for 2 hours, take a break for a lunch, right? So if you are going long distances, truck drivers can only drive about 9 hours a day. So if they're a professional driver getting paid to drive, we probably shouldn't be driving in it more than them in a day, because we are by no means a professional driver, nor are we getting paid to drive. So making sure that you stay safe, alert, right? We've talked about drowsy driving. You don't want to get tired behind the wheel because you have a lot of hazards there. Okay, potential road conditions, emergencies. You can pause this and look at some things that you might need. Probably don't need a CB radio anymore because cell phones work pretty much anywhere, but truck drivers, that's what they use to communicate with each other. If it's winter, knowing the roadways. If you're traveling over the pass, are chains required or traction tires required? What does that look like for that? Making sure that you might have some food or water if you get stuck, especially adverse conditions. If it's snowing, sometimes the pass will close. And if you're on the pass, you just kind of have to sit and wait or turn around and go back to where you came from. So when I went to school in Pullman, Always have some kind of food and water just to be ready if the pass closed, because I had to get back to the west side for where my parents lived. Okay. Enjoying your travel. Sometimes it might be more efficient or cost effective to fly and then rent a car. Obviously, that's not an option that you have until you turn 25. But if you're traveling with your parents, right, road trips are fun, but sometimes it might not be the best way unless you're trying to see things along the way to get there. Okay. Making sure you know before you go. WSDOT is Washington State's traffic safety, or not traffic safety, driving, and they have traffic cameras. So if we want to see what Seattle's traffic looks like right now, you click on this. Green means wide open. If we get in here by Everett, we can click a traffic camera, and based on this, you can see that it's rained down in Everett. It's sunny where I'm at right now, but you can see a little bit of rain. And if we want to go maybe down by UW, don't know why, but maybe we want to get down on a road there, we can click on their traffic camera. It looks wide open, and right, that on-ramp is pretty wide open, right? And it also tells you when this was taken. So they update throughout the time. Since not a lot of people are traveling, it's probably not going to. We can come up to Bellingham. No, that's Arlington. Somewhere Bellingham. Oh, here we go. I-5. You can go by. So looks like mileposts. Bellingham is in the 200s. So let's get up here to us and see home. Look at us right there, wide open. 3 cars going northbound, 5 coming southbound, right? So not a lot of people out right now, which is good. So we have that there, okay? So what you're going to do, and this is what you're going to comment, is you are going to create a plan for a small trip. This trip needs to be at least 200 miles, and you're going to tell me where you're going. Whoops, this is hidden for you. Okay, you're going to tell me where you're going, how long it's going to take, and one thing that you might want to consider. Okay, so distance, time, and one thing you would want to consider based on where you're going. So for me, I'm going to choose Pullman. So you cannot choose Pullman. Pullman is about 6 hours away. I don't know the distance off the top of my head because I always left from my parents' house in Lake Stevens. I haven't driven to Pullman a ton from Bellingham. So I'm just kind of adding in my head what it would be, but it's about 320-ish miles. So it's going to take about 6 hours, 6.5 hours. And one thing that I would want to be aware of is what is the pass like at I-90? Snoqualmie Pass. Is the pass clear? Is it rainy? Is it snowy? It's April. So based on my past experiences, they probably don't have snow left, but they do get snow, late season snow every once in a while. So that's the one thing I'm going to consider. Okay. And you're just going to comment in the assignment underneath that you picked a place, how far away is it, the time it's going to take you, and one thing that you're going to consider. And that's how I'm going to know that you have successfully completed today's activity. Okay. So that is all for now, and be looking out for our next activity to continue traffic safety.